Welcome to the San Diego City Employees Retirement System's 6th annual membership meeting. Very pleased to have you all here today, and I'm happy to see so many active members and retired members. This meeting is for everyone, and we want to share a wealth of information with you today. I'm Cynthia Queen, the Member Services Director, and soon you'll be hearing an overview from my colleagues, Mark Hovey, Mary Lewis, Elaine Reagan, and Liza Chrisofi. And we're here to tell you all about your retirement system. That's why we're here, and we are glad to share with you. We're going to start with a formal presentation, and then we will move on to the question and answer. Again, I encourage you to fill out the cards, and we'll be glad to take those questions for you. And thank you again for being here today, and I will now turn it over to our Chief Executive Officer, Mark Hovey.
That was for her, right? Okay. Well, thank you again for coming. As Cynthia mentioned, this is our 6th annual meeting. If this is a first-time experience for you, welcome. If this is a repeat experience for you, welcome back. We're happy to host these each fall and share some updates with you and answer a few of your questions. I have a few things I'm going to cover today, some changes in our board leadership, some accomplishments that we recorded in this past year, and then looking ahead, what are the few things that we are focused on. First of all, our board looks a bit different than it did last year. We've had considerable change in our board composition. We have 13 board members, 6 of whom are new. We have new mayoral appointees, Denise Thompson, Jeannie Posner, and Thanasi Priovalos. We have a new mayoral designee. This is the mayor's representative, Natasha Kalura. And we have new elected members, Jimmy Steele and Jeff Wallace. So we are normally hopeful that even though board turnover, our board terms change every 2 years, that reappointments where someone can serve a second term will help keep more continuity in the board. But we're very fortunate that a existing board member, Ed Kitrosser, was reappointed to serve a second term. Ed is here today. Would you raise your hand, Ed? So Ed is our board president. He has served very well on our Disability and Audit Committee for the past 4 years. And now as a board president, of course, he'll be serving on all of our committees. So his peers elected him president at our meeting a few weeks ago. He is a retired partner from Moss Adams, which is a large regional CPA firm, and just an invaluable addition to our board. Joining Ed in the leadership role, Alan Arolato is another elected member. He's a local fire captain. He's serving a second term as well, and he is our board vice president. It's a great group of trustees, and we're very fortunate to have them. They are focused on serving you and fulfilling their fiduciary duties to our members. Next, I'd like to cover some accomplishments that we generated in this past year. A little closer? All right, thank you. First, we engaged the services of an actuarial firm called EFI to do an audit on the work of SDCERS actuary Chiron. EFI confirmed that the actuarial costs and liabilities that have been calculated by Chiron in our actuarial evaluations were reasonable and appropriate and in compliance with generally accepted actuarial principles. This is a great governance measure for us to have this audit done. We're very pleased that the results came out as they did. Second, we completed a risk assessment based upon the Association of Public Pension Fund Auditors Guidelines. We reviewed 25 management and operational functions and the related controls associated with the best practices in these areas. Evaluation comments were prepared for each one, and noting any organizational opportunities for us to improve our controls. We were real pleased that in all areas, the operational function categories were rated as compliant or satisfactorily compliant. Next, in terms of retiree health, we've been spending a lot of energy continuing to support that program as well. One of the things that we did in the past year is we have changed the way incoming calls from retirees are made to SDCERS. They now go into our call center rather than to one person. This allows a number of people to be able to be responding to your phone calls in a more timely manner. In addition, we also set up a dedicated email account, health@sdcers.org, which allows reimbursement requests for expenses to come in and be processed more efficiently. A third thing we did is we worked with the Social Security Administration and identified easier ways for retirees to learn of their annual Medicare allotment from the Social Security Administration. And then finally, we revised our procedures of notifying those who turn 65 what Medicare options are available to them. So a number of important things that we did to better serve our retirees in the health function. And finally, you may have noticed that we've rolled out social media in this past year. We are now on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And it's just another way that we are reaching out to members to help them stay connected to what's been going on at SDCERS. We're very pleased that we have an active, engaged group of retirees that have registered on these social media sites, as well as active members. So Cynthia Queen will touch on that a little bit more in a few minutes. Continuing on, we recorded investment returns this past year of 13.4%, and that compares to our investment return objective of 7.5%. So very solid results. We also did very well against our benchmark, which is tied to our specific mix of assets and liabilities. So Liza will talk more about that shortly. Also, we reviewed our investment with our investment consultant, Hewitt Ennis Knupp. We reviewed how the impacts of Proposition B affected the retirement system. As you may know, Proposition B closed the defined benefit plan to any newly hired city employee other than for police. So in Hewitt Ennis Knupp, our investment consultant, their conclusion was that our long-term investment horizon supports our current mix of US stocks, international stocks, real estate, and private equity, and that revising our current mix of investments really doesn't meaningful impact our investment risk. So even though Prop B is out there, it doesn't really impact the system as we see it right now. From a governance point of view, a key goal of ours this past year was to ensure that our staff members were engaged in leadership and key roles in conferences and training sessions around the country. And I'm very pleased to report that 6 of our employees served as panelists, sometimes more than once, at some key conferences that were held this past year, including the Stanford Fiduciary College and the Institutional Investors Conference. So we've got an engaged staff that I think is making a difference in the public as well. And then finally, our administrative costs and our overall spending this year once again finished under budget. So that's good news. Our investment expenses were a little bit higher than what we budgeted for, but with investment returns of 13.4%, our investment fees are tied to our assets. So higher assets mean higher fees, so we expected that. But we remain committed to ensuring that we are controlling our spending in a responsible way. So looking forward, a few of the things that we're focused on in this coming year. One is continuing to focus on communications. Besides the social media sites that I talked about recently, we conducted a survey with our membership on how to improve our website. And we had over 100 responses from members giving us suggestions on what we could do to improve things. So we're looking to enhance our website to be more member-friendly and proactive. We'll be adding content on how to do retirement applications online through our website. And we're updating our retirement booklets on benefits for our members continually. And we're making updates to our website several times each week. So we encourage you to check us out at SDCERS.org. From an internal control point of view, we are going through a thorough data conversion cleanup exercise to ensure that we are ready to go with our new pension system. This will ensure the highest level ever in the accuracy of our pension calculations. We're implementing an updated plan to ensure all of our documents are stored electronically for faster access. And we're studying our job descriptions on our associated training to ensure our new system will be properly supported going forward. And mentioning that new pension system, yes, in 2014 we'll be having a new system debuting. We're really excited about the improvements, not only for SDCERS, but for our members as well. Our retirement process will be online, as well as the ability to register for retirement seminars. We're automating our creditable service calculations, which will ensure that they're more speedily done. And then finally, our correspondence will be automated and member-specific versus bulk mail. So we're looking for better ways of communicating with you and targeted emails. And then finally, we're looking to resolve, you've heard me say this in years past for those of you who've been here, looking to resolve some remaining litigation. We had one large case associated with purchase service credits, which has largely been dismissed against SDCERS. There are a few remaining issues there that we're likewise hoping to resolve in the upcoming year. And then we're also in the settlement discussions with the city over the substantially equal or UAL or unfunded liability lawsuit. The city has been pursuing an action against SERS which would require investment losses to be shared with the members, which we strongly oppose. But we are close in our discussions to resolving that issue with the city. And if we're able to knock this last lawsuit out, it will be the first time in a decade that we have no litigation with our largest active plan sponsor. So we're very excited and looking forward to that. So that's it for my comments right now. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Elaine Reagan, and then again we'll have time for questions a bit later. Thank you.
Wow. Good morning. This is my first presentation at the annual membership meeting. I'm happy to be here and happy to see all of your lovely faces. On the legal current, I've just given you kind of some brief overviews of some of the monumental things that have occurred in the past year that will have the potential to affect retirement benefits. Prop B, I think you've all heard of. That was the initiative that the voters passed last June to close the DB plan for new entrants. It took effect on July the 20th of 2012, closing the plan for everybody except sworn police officers. And we have determined that police recruits would not be eligible to enter the plan until they finish the academy and become sworn. The MEA appealed this passage by filing an action with PERB, the Public Employees Relations Board, on the grounds that the city did not meet and confer as they're required to do under the Myers-Milius-Brown Act. The union initially won that case at the adjudicator hearing level, and the city has appealed. The appeal is still pending before the PERB board. I go out and check it about once a month or so just to see the status, but nothing has happened yet. We expect that will take approximately a year from the date of the appeal to get through that process. And in the meantime, Prop B is on the books and we are implementing it. But we are keeping a list of all of the employees who are affected, in other words, those who do not come into the pension plan, so that if Prop B should get overturned, we can react quickly and get those people back into the plan. The state pension reform, otherwise known as PEPRA, you may have heard of that as well. It's a very complex body of law. It was Governor Brown's pension reform effort. It's been on the books now for almost a year, and we're still struggling with questions arising out of that particular piece of legislation. It applies only to port and airport employees because it doesn't apply to independent charter cities who have their own retirement systems. So it will not affect city employees. But as I said, it's a very complex body of law. We've developed some FAQs based on what is known at this time, and you can read those on our website if you're interested. Basically, it affects only members who work for the port and the airport who were hired on or after January 1 of 2013 and had either never been a member of a public employee retirement system in California before being hired, or if they had been a prior member of a public pension system, they had more than a 6-month break in service. In other words, they didn't establish reciprocity. Those are the only people who actually fall into PEPRA. We call them PEPRA members for port and airport employees. It has a lot of effects. It requires a lower benefit formula for safety members. For the port, because they had already enacted their own pension reform, their benefit formula was actually lower than the formula provided for in PEPRA, so they were allowed to keep their current formula. But it does require 50-50 cost sharing of the normal cost of the retirement benefit for employees, and it requires a 3-year final compensation period for those PEPRA members. It also has a new definition of pensionable pay for PEPRA members that limits any add-ons, such as canine pay or motorcycle pay or any of the other add-ons that you see that some employees receive. PEPRA members won't receive those as part of their pensionable pay. They're limited to base pay. PSCs, it eliminated the ability for all employees, whether or not they were hired on or after January 1 of 2013, to purchase the 5-year PSC. So that is no longer eligible for port and airport employees. And it contained a felony forfeiture provision similar to what is found in Prop B, that if an employee who is convicted of a felony arising out of their job duties, from that day forward, from the day of the commission of the felony forward, they forfeit their retirement benefits, and all they can receive is a return of any contributions that have been made without interest. So that's pretty tough. On the U.S. Supreme Court decisions, again, you probably all heard about the Defense of Marriage Act and Proposition 8 and what the Supreme Court did with those. It has generally a prospective application for active employees. As you retire, you would be able to, and this is city, port, and airport, you would be able to designate a same-sex spouse to receive a surviving spouse continuance. We treat same-sex spouses the same as a opposite-sex spouse now going forward. It also provides for a tax benefit. The tax consequences now for married same-sex spouses would be the same as for opposite-sex spouses. And that affects your rollover rights. If you have a member who passes away, the surviving spouse, whether or not of the same or opposite sex, has the same rollover rights as an opposite-sex spouse. And the ability to defer payment of a lump sum retirement benefit until the deceased member would have reached 70 and a half. Prior to the Supreme Court's decision, same-sex spouses did not have those rights. So those are some pretty important things to keep in mind as you progress towards your retirement. Cycle C filings is the last thing I wanted to let you know about. We will be filing our Cycle C filings with the Internal Revenue Code in January of 2014. And what that does is it allows us to renew our tax determination letter. Back in 2008, we received a tax determination letter as a result of the VCP process that we went through. That is the IRS's, good housekeeping seal of approval. It says that our plan meets all of their requirements and that the administration of our plan meets all of the IRS requirements. It allows us to keep our qualified tax status, very important because that means you can make pre-tax contributions to your retirement. So it's important that we keep on top of that. And having a tax determination letter also allows SDCERS to self-correct errors instead of having to go through the IRS to have the IRS approve our correction process. But that also means that SDCERS must follow the self-correction guidelines that are in Revenue Procedure 2013-50 put out by the IRS. So a lot of times you'll ask us questions, why are we doing this? Why are we charging interest on overpayments? You know, why are we collecting things in a certain way? It's because we're following those guidelines, and it's a pretty thick booklet that we have to follow. It's not one particular rule or one particular Internal Revenue Code or one particular Treasury regulation. It's an overview of all of them. So with that, I'll leave it, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you have at the end of the presentation. And I'd like to introduce the next speaker, which is Mary Lewis, our Chief Financial Officer.
Thanks, Elaine. Good morning. And you see us, we're not passing notes up here. We're looking at questions that we're getting from you to prepare to answer them. A lot of great questions for the Q&A, so stay tuned after we finish our remarks. So I have three things to talk about. The first one I think is going to be of great interest. Every year we do a calculation. When we complete our financial work, we determine the realized earnings of the system. And then we go through a formula that's in the municipal code, and that determines if we pay the 13th check and the Corbett amount that year. And that is all laid out in the Muni Code, and we take realized earnings, which this year were over $241 million, deduct administrative expenses, interest, and so forth. So the good news is that there are sufficient realized earnings to pay the 13th check this year, as well as Corbett. In addition, because we did not have sufficient realized earnings last year, that Corbett benefit was accrued, and so we'll be paying last year's Corbett in addition to this year's Corbett. So that's good news. The amounts are about $16.5 million of plan assets will go out to retirees, and I believe you may know the rules. You need to be on payroll in October, so we pay those benefits in November. Second bit of information that is very important to us, and I have a visual on this. This is our PAFR. Our CAFR, which is our Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and this small version, the PAFR, is our Popular Annual Financial Report. They both won prestigious awards again for 2012. We're really proud of it. Over 5 years running, and it really demonstrates from an impartial panel of government, of finance officers judging us that we're doing a good job in getting information out that is complete and comprehensible to our membership. Our communications manager, Christina DeLiva, who's taking pictures and help run the show, she puts together a fabulous summary of all this financial information, and this will happen again this year. It won't look this way, we haven't picked the cover yet, but it is really accessible, we believe, and we'd like to hear back from you if you have ideas. We want to make this easy to read, understand, so you can follow the progress of the system. And then lastly, I just want to mention, Mark mentioned this in his comments, that we are continually trying to improve internal controls, process improvements. I oversee also a division of the system that processes the benefits, retirement setups, terminations, and so forth. We've instituted multiple levels of review. We work very closely with Elaine and her staff to get proper understanding of very complicated municipal code and plan rules so that we're doing the right job. And we're also encouraging our staff to step forward. We want to create an environment where if there is a mistake, we want to hear about it right away. We want to get it corrected and find out how to improve the process. That concludes my comments, and I'd like to introduce our Chief Investment Officer, Liza Kristofi.
morning. Well, it always makes my job a little easier when I have good numbers to report. So as Mark mentioned, this year, for the fiscal year, we were up 13.4% net of fees. You can see how that compares to our benchmark, so it was a very good year. You look at some of the longer term numbers, for 5 years it still looks pretty low, but keep in mind that that number still includes the market correction of 2009. When that rolls off next year, those numbers will improve. But again, looking long term, 10 years and since inception, we're at 8% and over 9%, so very good long term results. And then just to give you some commentary on what happened in the markets last year. US stocks were the strongest asset class, up over 22%. And really that's a function of what was going on in the economy. There was some stabilization. The employment picture was improving. We've had solid corporate earnings, low interest rates, an accommodative Federal Reserve. And in US stocks, the best performers were small cap stocks or stocks of small companies. Active investment managers outperformed their benchmark by over 1%, which again is a very good result. And as you remember, we invest both actively and passively through investing in indexes, and then we hire investment firms, and those active managers outperformed. And then really all asset classes added value over their benchmark last year. Even emerging market equities, which have had a bit of a tougher time, but they still outperformed their benchmark and added positive returns. And the only asset class that did not outperform its benchmark, which was global stocks, but we're still up 15.7%. And then this shows you the historical market values. The low there you can see we hit in about March of '09. That was kind of at the depths of the '08-'09 market correction. Through the end of June, the fiscal year, we were at 5.8 billion, and since then we're up over 6.3 billion and up a little bit over 6% so far this year. And then just giving you some highlights of what we've done in the investment division during the last year. We increased the allocation to private equity from 5% to 10%. This is an asset class that we got into in 2009. We've had extraordinary results. Part of it was because of timing of when we entered that market. But we've also earned on an annual basis returns of slightly over 20%. We think long term that private equity is going to be able to generate substantially higher returns than some of the public market asset classes like stocks and bonds. So we increased the allocation there. We also shortened the fixed income duration, basically taking a more conservative stance in the fixed income portfolio. And that's basically due to longer term concerns over rising interest rates. Interest rates right now are so low, at some point one would think they would have to rise. And this is a more conservative stance, focusing in on shorter maturities. And then we also created a dedicated 1% allocation to emerging market equities. And the reason we did that is basically to bring our overall exposure to emerging market equities up to a market weight. We have some exposure to emerging market equities in our international stock allocation, but this is a dedicated allocation here. And then we also increased our weighting to emerging market debt or emerging market bonds from 3 to 5%. We think that asset class provides very attractive risk-adjusted returns, better returns certainly than what we're seeing in the US, and also add some nice diversification to the portfolio. And then this just shows our target asset allocation as of June 30th. And you can see the different weightings in US equities, non-US equities, emerging markets, global equities, which basically allows the manager to invest throughout the world. It's not confined to either just US or non-US. Private equity, as I've said, we've increased the allocation there to 10%, and that's where we're investing in private companies that don't have stocks listed on an exchange. And then we're also beginning to ramp up our allocation to infrastructure, and we're investing in things like water, utilities, various energy strategies, natural gas pipelines, things of that nature, and then emerging market debt, real estate at 11%, And then we have an opportunistic fund. And that can be anywhere from 0 to 8% of the fund. And we originally had an old TALF investment, but that matured. And so what we've been looking for going forward is investments that might be short-term in nature, so they're truly opportunistic, or it might be something due to a dislocation in the market where we think there's a strong opportunity. What we've just recently added is some opportunistic real estate, and just to prove an investment there. And I think we're going to be looking at some credit or debt strategies to add to that opportunistic fund as well. And then we've got 22% in U.S. intermediate fixed income. So that kind of gives you a picture of what we're doing in investments. And then I'm going to turn it back to Cynthia, who's going to have a few comments and then I think handle the Q&A.
Thank you, Liza. I hope you were all paying attention. There will be a quiz on the investments portion after the Q&A. So, we're so happy that you're here today because we want you to be informed about your pension. I like to educate people about what's going on. I want you to know your benefits, and I enjoy answering questions. So we do a number of different forms of outreach, and this is a fun one because we get to see people in person. So I have a couple items that I wanted to make sure that you're aware of. Of course, we have our webpage at SDCERS.org, and you can go there in the middle of the night. That's why it says 24/7. So welcome to join us on the page, and we have a number of features on there that would help you. We have calculators, and we have summaries of the publications that are there, as well as all of our latest news. And then, if you'd like to speak with a real person, we have our call center always available. The manager of the call center is here today, Antonio Roberti, who was greeting you at the door. He's done a fine job of working with the team there to make sure that we're answering all your questions, and we'd be glad to help you out because much of what you're looking for is individualized, and we need to look at our system to be able to answer your questions. An excellent feature that we have is the member portal, which is accessed via our web page. And on that page, whether you are active or retired or deferred, you can view your account information and look at a number of other items that are important to you. It depends on whether you're active or whether you are retired. But the most important thing I want you to do after you leave here is I want you to check on the portal and update your beneficiaries today. What are you going to do when you go home? I will update my beneficiaries today. It's very important. Thank you. We have several questions in the Q&A that are related to the Affordable Care Act, and I'm going to cover a few pieces of that. The City of San Diego determines retiree health care for eligible City of San Diego employees. But SDCERS processes the annual open enrollment for those members and reimbursements throughout the year. We've worked very hard to improve that process, and we are always welcoming your feedback, and we'd like to help you with your questions that you have personally. Something new that's going on that you're, I think, all aware of is the Affordable Care Act. Some people call it Obamacare. And we have been receiving questions on that. And we, in order to help folks with that, we have added a new feature to the web page that has a question and answer portion and will guide you to some items. I want to just real quickly answer the couple questions I received. People were asking, would the Affordable Care Act have an effect on my city-sponsored insurance? Yeah. It'll give you some extra options. You still will have the same allotment and the same Kaiser and Health Net that we've been working with or your privately insured reimbursement. None of that changes. But you can go out and research yourself and see if there might be a way that you would like to use it as another privately secured reimbursement for you. So please look at the information on our webpage. If you have some questions, give us a call, and we'll be putting more information up as that comes along. We're working to educate ourselves on that as well and look forward to helping you with that. One of the things I most enjoy about my job is that I have my own personal focus groups, and they are known as the retiree associations. And I specifically invited some of the folks here today, and I want to take a minute to introduce them. We have the City of San Diego Retired Employees Association, who had a table out front. We have President Jim Barras there in the back. Hi, Jim. Jim does a great job, and I encourage you all to stop at that table because these are the folks who will keep you apprised of what's going on with your benefits, and they have a lot of good activities and programs that go on. We also have the Asks Me local chapter of Chapter 36 here, and Joan Hernandez is the leader of that group. She's also here working at the table out front. There's Joan. Thank you. And I also wanted to just again point out that we have our trustee who represents the retirees. Dick Wilkin is here in the front, and Dick is a major advocate for you and the plan as well, of course, but really works to represent the views. So I work closely with these groups to gather feedback and to make sure that we can provide as good of information as we can to you. And I attend their meetings monthly. And additionally, we have a quarterly group that is the leaders of all of the retiree groups, including the retired and fire police. And Mark and I meet with them to make sure that we're handling all of the really important topics. And I find that to be very valuable input. Now, Mark mentioned earlier that we have moved into the modern world with social media, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Christina DeLiva out there, who really worked hard to get us all there. And as Mark said, we've got Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter accounts, and what I really want you to do after you update your beneficiaries is, just to make my day, I want you to like us on Facebook. I can't get enough of that. Hold on. Like us on Facebook. Thank you. Additionally, I wanted to mention that another feature we added this year is we invited some of the city's partnership vendors who represent both the active and retired employees. So out in the lobby, we have the San Diego Metropolitan Credit Union, and we have Sprint. And along with the retiree groups, you can take your choice of fighting over the hummus, the cookies, or the free phones. Oh, no free phones today, sorry. But hummus and cookies, and it looks really good. So, thank you for all of that. Now, we're going to move on to our questions. And I am very impressed with the number of questions we've received. I think maybe it's easier to write it on a card than to have to stand up and ask it yourself. So I like, this was a good idea for us to implement. And we are going to do our best to answer these questions fully for you. I've got my police entourage here today in case I have any really difficult questions. Told you I was going to point you out. So I'm going to start out with my favorite question that we received, which is a good one. It said, did you invite the media, the television, or any of the local newspapers? It's a good question. Christina was certainly on the phone with all the media last night. And this is a public meeting, everyone is welcome, and I was hoping that Oprah was going to show up, but I don't think she could make it. So it doesn't appear that we have any media, but there's nothing more important to me than City TV 24, so please tell your friends they can watch this later. So we're going to move through this. We've got just enough time for this. I'm going to, this next one is for me, and then we'll move along to each of my colleagues with their questions. So one person asked, can you buy service years from working part-time at the city? This person has a combined record where they work full-time and part-time. This is a question where we want to answer this question for you individually. You may have some recollection of what type of time you had worked, but we always have to check this record very carefully. So for a question like this, I want you to give us a call at the number that we provided, and we will go through your record and walk you through the steps that you'll need to look at exactly what's available to you. You're always welcome to do that, and you can look for that information on the webpage or by calling. Now, I've got some questions on the Deferred Retirement Option Program, the DROP program. So we're going to start with Mary Lewis. And there are a couple questions that are a little bit related, and I'm trying to group them together. Sorry. So, for Mary, what are the expected changes to the DROP interest rates, both the active rate and the annuity rate?
Okay, yes, lots of questions on DROP. So we post on our website, and it's available now, the 12-month rolling average of where the indices are, what they're showing in terms of interest rates, both for the DROP account and for the annuity. Our board has the authority to set DROP interest, and they've done so. There are 2 board policies, board rules that determine what indexes we use and what percentage of each index to determine a rate. So for the DROP accounts, we use short-term indexes, 5-year money, risk-free, is what the DROP account gives. And then for annuities, we look at 20-year rates. The timing for when that interest, those 2 rates are determined is in November now. We've changed our board schedule, so this November, I'll be taking to the board where that 12-month rolling average, which is all by board rule, board policy, where that is at the end of September. And on the website as of August, and this is just available for you to watch the trends in interest rates. As you know, they're extremely low. They've ticked up recently, but still kind of at historical lows. For the drop account for 5-year, it's 1.13%, and for the annuity, it's 3.15%. That's at the end of August. That's not the final number that'll go to the board because we still need to input the September data. That's the process, how we weight those, how we come up with that 12-month rolling average is determined by our board, and we follow that, post the information so you can monitor it, and then take it to the board in November. Effective date will be January 1.
Thank you, Mary. And we've got a follow-up question to that. First, I want to point out to you that as we get a little closer to that board meeting, please do look on our webpage. We always let you know what is coming up on those board agendas. That's the best place to look for that. And then, Mary, the question is, since Liza Kristofi and her team have done such a fabulous job of bringing in huge returns, why not raise the drop interest rate?
Well, once again, it's not, it's our board's decision on how to set those rates. We're talking about, for the drop accounts, 5-year risk-free money. So from what financial institution could you get a return risk-free at that level? So we're prudent guardians, custodians of pension assets. So I think that's something our board takes very carefully and seriously in setting policy about the rates. If we had another bad year and we had when the market crashed, our returns were in the negative category. Would you want to have your drop account be at risk? So you're not taking any investment risk with your drop account. And so we have set these rates, our board have set these rates based on a policy, looking at what's reasonable for short-term money, for 5-year money, and then for 20-year annuity.
Thank you. This question is for Liza. What incentive is there to leave my money in SDCERS if I can make a better return on the outside?
There probably isn't an incentive to leave it at SDCERS, but I'd sure like to know what you're investing in.
I think the incentive is that lifetime pension. Thank you. Now I have 2 related questions. I'm going to start with Elaine Reagan. This question is the Corbett settlement the law, and why do you have an option not to pay it?
The Corbett settlement has been incorporated into the municipal code. There are provisions in the municipal code that talk about payment of the Corbett benefit, so yes, it is the law. And I'm not quite sure the second part of that question, what you mean, but the code does say that in years when we don't have sufficient realized earnings, we don't pay the benefit, and I think that's what you're referring to. That's part of the settlement, but what it says, it doesn't mean we don't ever pay the benefit. What it means in the code is that in the years when we don't have sufficient realized earnings, we don't pay the benefit for that year, but what would have been paid that year continues to accrue and rolls over to the next year when we do have sufficient earnings. So it is ultimately paid.
Thank you. And this is a related question for Mary Lewis. There was a large amount, this question says, there was a large amount of money left over after the guidelines were met for the Corbett settlement, disbursement, and the 13th check. Why can't some of that money be set aside for future years in case the guidelines fall short?
Well, we follow the municipal code formula. We administer the plan document for city employees that's in the municipal code. In terms of money left over, we hope there's lots of money left over because those are the assets that pay retirees benefits every month. So the assets are there for payment of benefits. We follow this formula, and based on the formula, we either pay or not pay the 13th check or Corbett. And as Elaine mentioned, Corbett is ultimately paid when the realized earnings are available in the following year. So there will always be assets that we're managing. So it is a separation, I think. You think about it, you know, you have a pool of assets and then you're following a formula in a plan document to determine whether they'll be paid or not paid that year.
Thank you. Now, this question is for Mark Hovey.
Rats.
He was enjoying what a fine job his staff was doing. Mark, this is related to the DROP program. At the end of your 5-year DROP program, can you collect unemployment for 1 year?
Yeah, collecting unemployment income at the end of DROP. This topic has been in the news. Those of you who read the newspaper have been following this. The state of California is the one that administers the unemployment benefits for members. SDCERS has no official role in administering unemployment income. We administer defined benefit retirement benefits, so it may sound like a non-answer, but I would defer to the state of California that administers that benefit for determining who's eligible.
Thank you. Okay, now the next couple are for me, so you guys can take a break. Because I love to answer questions and I wasn't getting enough of a turn. I wanted to follow up. I think I've answered most of the questions on the Affordable Care Act, but this one was a point that I really want to make. A person here who states that they are 60 years young, it's my editorial, has been utilizing Kaiser. And what do I have to do if I want to keep Kaiser? Nothing. Okay, so if you have one of the healthcare, if you're in one of our healthcare plans, when it comes time for open enrollment next year and you want to keep your healthcare, you're just fine, just like last year. You'll just continue to be enrolled at that. But if you have any other specific questions on your healthcare, please do give us a call. We get a number of questions on that, and we're very glad to help you with that. And another related question, I think I understand it. A person asked, if the premium of your healthcare insurance increased, can you file for a refund with the city? Pretty sure the answer is no, but if you have individual specific questions, please give us a call and we can look into the specifics of your account. Okay. Another two for me. We have two related questions here where the member is asking, previously you could see the balance of your retirement account on your paycheck. And I believe what you're talking about is all the contributions and interest that you've made into your account. And under new systems, that's no longer viewable. How can we check our retirement balance? My simple answer is give us a call. 619-525-3600, and Antonio will let you know. We can see that information in our system, and I recognize that through a change of how information is relayed, it's not there anymore. I'm taking this information as notes with me because I'm currently designing with the team our new portal system, and we'll look at having that information available on the new system that we'll have available later next year. So I always appreciate that type of input. Okay, here's a fun question for Mary Lewis, which I believe is related to the COLA, cost of living adjustment. The question is, how much of a raise will I get on my retirement check next year, and how will I find out?
Again, we follow our Muni Code provisions on cost of living increases, and I guess the answer is, depends on when you retired. There's a 2% cap on COLA, and that's generally expected, I think, to be the case for those who have retired prior or some years prior to the current fiscal year. We ask our actuary to look at the rules in the municipal code, which looks at cost of living increases, the CPI, and give us an analysis of where that is related to the Muni Code rules. And we take that to the board before the end of the fiscal year. So if there's a June meeting, it'll be in June, it could be in May. I think it was in May this past year. Our board has to officially approve that COLA increase. And that is based on what the cost of living was for that year, and if any of the retirees have banked COLA. This gets a little bit technical, but it's all available when we take it to the board, so you would be able to see what, based on the year you retired, what your cost of living increase is. There are a few subcategories that get a different COLA amount, but by and large, we're looking at most individuals subject to the 2% as a cap, but it's all based on the cost of living growth that year. Hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you. Okay, we're down to our last couple questions. I love when the timing works out perfectly. So now this is for our star general counsel, Elaine Reagan. Elaine, is there any update available on the lawsuit regarding the purchase of service credit?
Briefly, we have been in the discovery phase of that lawsuit for the past couple of months. We do have a status conference set for October the 28th. We expect that during that status conference, the court will set a trial date. We're hoping for a trial date before the end of the year and to have this case resolved by New Year's. But it would depend upon the trial date that the court sets.
Thank you. And then, Elaine, another related question for you. Are there any other legal actions that have the potential to affect or reduce our retirement benefits, including drop?
By legal actions, I would assume you also mean legislation. There's no litigation out there that I'm aware of, and the only legislation I'm aware of is a push by some city mayors across the state of California to get another pension reform initiative on the ballot for next year. And as I understand that initiative, what they would like to do is to amend the state constitution to allow public pension systems to change your retirement benefit prospectively only. They would not be able to change your vested benefit for years of service already earned, but prospectively going forward, they could lower the benefit. I read something in the newspaper this morning briefly. I wasn't able to read the entire article because of time constraints, that they have actually started the first step of getting that initiative on the ballot. So that's something you're going to want to keep an eye on.
Thank you. Okay, now I've saved, our last question here is for Mark Hovey. Ready, Mark? I've heard this question asked before, and for some reason it's one of my favorite because I'm a pension geek, apparently. So, Mr. Hovey, when will SDCERS run out of money due to the lack of new members?
Liza showed a graph that indicated our retirement assets are currently $5.8 billion. Actually, that was as of June 30th. As of yesterday, even as of today, the market is also going up today. We're closer to $6.4 billion. That's more money than we've had in the history of SDCERS. So even if we didn't earn another nickel of investment earnings for the foreseeable future, and even if the city and the port and the airport stopped paying their annual pension contributions, and even if active members paid nothing for their retirement benefit, all of which is not going to happen, of course. We're going to earn money. The city is going to make contributions. Members are going to make contributions. But if all of that didn't happen, we have $6.4 billion, and that's enough to pay retirement benefits for 20 years with no additional contributions. We have money for a long time. You should feel that we are in good shape, that your benefits will be adequately funded for a long period of time.
Thank you. And that's why around the office we call Liza the $6 billion woman. I want to, yeah, go ahead. All right, thank you. I want to thank each and every one of you so much for being here. We have almost 200 people here today. This is the best turnout we've had. And I'm so pleased that you all care about your benefits and wanted to come and educate yourselves. I appreciate all of you taking the time to write down these questions. If you have some more specifics on yours, please do contact us. We'd love to help you. Thank you all again very much, and please stop at the tables on the way out.